The Stormwind Vault was the third of the level 65-man dungeons introduced in Turtle WoW way back during their 1.16 expansion patch, Mysteries of Azeroth. I'll briefly go over the dungeon and offer some of my thoughts, as well as bring us up to speed on the latest updates and changes to the other two level 60 dungeons, the Karazhan Crypts and the Black Morass, with a minor mention on Hayforge Quarry, also one of their new instances made to complement the Blackrock Depths leveling range. So the Stormwind Vault has a much simpler and far more straightforward dungeon design when compared to Karazhan Crypts and the Black Morass, and has since its release been far more accessible in terms of being doable for regular level 60s and Dungeon Blues. This was the first of the custom instances I ran on Turtle WoW, and I can safely say that I had a rather simple time completing it in regular Dungeon Blues. Worth noting is that Stormwind Vault has the best pre-raid tanking set pieces out there, so I highly recommend all fresh level 60 tanks farm the dungeon for the Elite Guard gear. This is the gear that I've used when tanking in my initial Karazhan Crypts and Black Morass videos, despite their higher difficulty level. If you're a Horde player and are wondering how am I going to get inside a Stormwind dungeon safely, well, there is good news, as there is in fact a secondary entrance for the instance in the Elwyn Forest by the Mirror Lake waterfall. The pulls of the dungeon are fairly simple, and over time a few of the trash mobs have actually been removed since the dungeon's initial release. Although at the very start I would recommend doing the pulls up on the steps to avoid accidentally pulling the Elemental Patrol, as they can also pull a few of the Vault Guards with it, causing your party to be overwhelmed. In a nutshell, while the dungeon itself isn't overly complicated, the success of your group will somewhat depend on the tank knowing the pulls. The Vault Guards, for example, will do a pretty severe knockback, so make sure you are tanking them with your back to the walls. They will also cleave, so in the tight space of the instance, that may end up being something to watch out for. You'll find the dungeon itself is non-linear, and separates into 3 paths that could be done in any order. Straight ahead will lead to an Undead section, to the left a Demon section, and to the right will be the Beasts and the eventual end of the instance. I tend to do the Demon section first, and I would recommend that these pulls are always LOS so that the imps will come to you. There are 3 types of imps in these pulls, each with their own unique elemental casts: Frost, Arcane, and Fire. The Arcane imps will mana drain, the Frost imps will do the most damage to your tank, and the Fire imps I found could be saved for last in terms of kill priority as they don't really seem to do much. Depending on your group composition, you'll decide whether the Arcane imps or the Frost imps should be killed first. Be wary of the patrol once you've reached the main circular area of the Demon section. I prefer to mark it so that I'm aware of exactly where it is to reduce the risk of chaining several of the imp groups all at once. The boss there is an Ogre Mage that will cast fire spells and can do knockbacks just like the guards. Avoid his Rain of Fire as it takes for about 1k fire damage, and it should be a fairly simple fight. In the Undead section, the pulls are probably the most frustrating. You'll be faced with a lot of debuffs, from both the Undead mobs as well as the slimes. I would recommend killing the slimes first, as their debuffs are just awful. They will reduce your tank's armor and deal damage over time, as well as snare them and reduce their attack speed. The Undead Husks will just stack Frailty debuffs, which reduce stats by 10 per stack. There is again a Slime Patrol to take note of, as it could easily chain pull several groups at once, just like the Imp Patrol from before. There is one difficult pull in this dungeon here, as there is no way to avoid pulling 5 mobs at once. You will always get at least 1 Slime and 4 Husks, and that's assuming you do the pull correctly and don't chain the patrol. The Husks aren't that big of a deal, but with the snare, attack speed, and armor reductions from the slime, it can become frustrating to deal with so many mobs at once. Once the circular area is clear, you can move in, but be wary as on the left side room there is one husk that tends to patrol to the entrance, and your group could accidentally body pull the full additional group. So once that husk is out of sight, make sure everyone swiftly runs towards the boss's room. This is another fairly simple fight. You will be dealing with a few skeleton minor adds, and the boss will cast Mind Blasts and Life Drain, but otherwise the fight should be fairly straightforward. One thing worth noting is that this boss is immune to interrupts, so while his life drain can't be interrupted, it can still be dispelled off the tank like any other debuff. In the Beast section, you'll have some unique spiders not normally seen in vanilla World of Warcraft. There is one spider patrolling this area, but aside from that, the only things worth mentioning for these pulls are that creepers will cast daily poison volleys, and the skitterers will web your tank, reducing their attack speed by 100% as well as immobilizing them. Towards the end of this path, off to the side you'll find another boss. This boss will AoE silence, do a knockback, and cast Shadow Bolt volleys. After the boss is dead, stay together as your group moves forward. You will encounter a rat trap much like those in Stratholme. It's best to stack up and have your group be ready to AoE as soon as the trap is triggered. One party member can trigger the trap and move back to the rest of the group before the gate closes. Be wary of the patrolling elemental on the other side of the gate, as it can be accidentally body pulled should you get too close. On the other side of the trap are the last trash pulls of the instance. There are a few Madden Vault guards, the before mentioned patrolling elemental, and a pair of husks in a side room. After this, you have the last 3 bosses. The Orc Blademaster will disappear every now and then, causing an aggro drop and will need to be taunted to get back threat. He will thunderclap every now and then, and at low health will start a Bladestorm animation like Herod from the Scarlet Monastery, but I don't think I've actually ever seen any damage go off from this. Damien the Ripper is another simple tank and spank. He will vanish and backstab party members throughout the fight, but his damage output doesn't seem very high, so party members should be pretty safe. Simply taunt him once he reappears, and repeat until he's defeated. The last boss is Arctiras, the Glacier of Madness. It's a bit unique as it isn't exactly a traditional fight. You're facing this ice pylon and it doesn't have any regular attacks, but it will spam Frostbolts and Frost Novas. It will also mind control random party members, and this includes the tank. At 50%, 2 Frost Elementals will spawn, and they need to be focused down by the group as soon as they are summoned. I found a tactic that works best for me is to do a challenging shout followed by a shield wall once the ads come up. The most difficult situation in this encounter will be if the tank gets mind controlled as soon as the ads spawn. So be wary for an epic battle. Or just bug the boss out by attacking with ranged attacks while it floats there and does nothing. Hopefully this gets fixed soon. Either way, when the boss is dead, the loot will be in a chest in one of the previous rooms that had been previously blocked by ice. Upon release, the Stormwind Vault was a more polished dungeon compared to Karazhan Crypts and the Black Morass, which were plagued by either bugs such as the Akir drones or the invisible walls of Black Morass, or the oddly chosen designs such as the fast respawning bat traps and the 2 water resetting skeleton poles of Karazhan Crypts. The 2 biggest problems upon Stormwind Vault's release were the lack of quests and the lack of any identifiable trash loot. While upon release the other 2 dungeons had dedicated quests, the Stormwind Vault was just somewhat there, and the only trash loot that dropped were silver from the mobs. There was no cloth, no vendor trash, or the possibility of any BOEs. The trash loot issue was also shared by Black Morass, where the mobs only dropped the reputation turn-in items and no silver at all. So what has changed since the release of these dungeons? Later patches have added trash loot to the mobs of Stormwind Vault, and a few quests were added to the dungeon as well. For Karazhan Crypts, the water resetting skeleton poles were removed, the respawn on the bat trap was increased, and the final boss was given an additional loot drop, increasing the number of items dropped per kill from 1 to 2. Karazhan Crypts have also had their 2 guard mini-bosses turned into actual bosses with their own unique loot tables added to the dungeon, and the 2 half-buried treasure chests now have their own loot table as well, increasing the overall amount of loot a party can get in the dungeon. Though probably the most obvious change for these custom dungeons is actually the removal of Black Morass. The dungeon is no longer accessible in Turtle WoW and has been removed for the purposes of rebalancing and revamping. It most likely will not exist in its original state when it returns. Another aspect worth talking about for these dungeons is that every other WoW dungeon has unique BOEs that drop throughout the respective instances, and the lack of these unique BOEs takes away from the atmosphere of Turtle WoW's custom instances. While Karazhan Crypts and Stormwind Vaults do have the potential to drop greens and other items, they still lack their own unique BOE item flavor. Even Hateforged Quarry, a later addition to Turtle WoW's custom dungeons, has unique BOE items that drop only in that instance from their trash mobs, although those items are still only blacksmithing patterns or vendor trash instead of blue BOEs like in other World of Warcraft instances. In terms of quests, both Karazhan Crypts and Black Morass have had their own custom quests, and a few were added into Stormwind Vault as well. The amount of quests and quest flavor still does pale in comparison to the quests added in for Hateforged Quarry, for example. For Karazhan Crypts, there is the quest chain for the key to the instance, which eventually leads to killing the last boss, and Black Morass had its own unique quests to kill a few of the bosses and the reputation turn-in repeatables. For the Stormwind Vault, there were 3 quests added in. One quest tasks you with killing the last boss, another with looting items from the patrolling elementals, and a third to find and bring back an item that spawns inside the dungeon. There still exists plenty of opportunities to expand on the lore introduced here. What we have here is beneath the Alliance capital, in the Stormwind Vault, an ogre mage summoning demons, a necromancer raising the dead from the corpses of prisoners, and a glacier possibly like the one that held Ner'zhul's spirit prisoner in Warcraft 3, that is corrupting guards and prisoners alike, causing them to go mad. The lore you find in this dungeon, just from the mobs and bosses alone, is simply phenomenal. And yet there is no real acknowledgement of what actually is going on within the Stormwind Vault beyond those 3 isolated quests. I think there are plenty of opportunities for unique quests to be added to this dungeon, as well as to Karazhan Crypts in the Black Morass when the instant comes back, to better connect them to the rest of Azeroth. The Turtle WoW developers are hard at work developing content for their custom expansion, and I look forward to seeing how they continue to build up Mysteries of Azeroth, not only with the new content they plan to release, such as the Emerald Sanctum and Lower Karazhan Hall's raids, but also on how they revamp and add on to the content they've already released, to better relate these items to each other and further integrate them into the world of Azeroth. So after quite some time since my initial Karazhan Crypts and Black Morass reviews, this video officially concludes my 3-part series exploring Turtle WoW's custom level 60 dungeons. You can find my reviews and walkthroughs of the Black Morass and Karazhan Crypts on my channel, or by using the links in the video description below. Thanks for watching.